Okay, looks like we're live. Yeah, so this is a unique problem I haven't encountered before. Midnight Scenes. It looks like it's a Unity point and click game, right? Well, whenever I try recording it or streaming it or even just having it up on OBS, it seems to just have a bunch of frame rate issues, even though it says it's getting 60 frames per second, and it just gets really choppy. Now, I'm not sure if that's just how it looks in the OBS viewport or if the game is actually freaking out. So, tell you what, you guys, go ahead and have a look at the intro here. I'm just going to start up the game, and that's it. Nothing more than the game. And you guys tell me if it looks and sounds all right. If it does, then clearly it's just a weird issue with my little, window on OBS. If it does, look choppy and strange, then we'll see what we can do about that. Might have to just go right into the horror short stories if this doesn't work. But yeah, I tried recording it, and now I'm trying streaming it, so maybe we'll have a better, yeah, it looks choppy. I haven't even played it yet, Alan. Good one. OBS does what OBS wants. Yeah, I haven't had this problem before, though. It's really weird. Okay, here we go. Yeah, look at that. And the frames shoot down from 60 to 3. 3 frames per second. I don't think that's gonna be something that's gonna be possible. Choppy like karate? So it's lagging for everyone? Yeah, and it's supposed to be slowly panning down to a car on the highway, but it's starting to look like a flip book. Yeah, that's no good. Incredible lag. Yeah, why? I don't understand. This is a Unity game. Yeah, that's not good at all. Okay, tell you what. We're gonna kill that. Yeah, and just to make sure, it wasn't my computer, I went ahead and started up Explore My Body. 0 issues, 60 frames per second. It's a Unity game. I don't understand what the problem could be there. Oh my god. What? Okay, it looks like the stream's having some issues too. Is it good now? Yeah, occasionally the stream will do that. That's my internet. That can't be blamed on the game. It's, every now and then it'll just, buffer for like 4 seconds and then go back to normal. It's pretty rare though. Okay, you can hear me. Okay. Yeah, no, don't worry. The black screen is because I killed the game. So if the game's not going to be working, then I don't know. I've never had an issue. It's a Unity game, so I don't know what the excuse is that it would be doing that. I guess we'll go right into the horror story, the short stories. I'll see if I can get that game working at some other time, but otherwise, it looks like we're just going to have to read a little bit of a spooky story in that case. Mystery point and click, more like power point and click. Yeah, exactly. That was weird. Okay, so tell you what, let me turn on a light. I'll get that book, and I guess we'll read a little bit more of those Gravedigger tales, if that's all right with you guys. I'm not sure why that game was doing it. I mean, I could understand if it was on some weird engine. Like, sometimes I have issues recording RPG Maker games. It just doesn't capture in the game capture, so I have to use, window capture or desktop capture, but that was a Unity game, so I don't know what it was doing. Maybe it's one of those malware things where it's actually, mining Bitcoin or something in the background, but yeah, I don't know. Okay, so give me about a minute to get a light in a book, and I guess we'll launch into the grave story tales. See you guys in a sec. Okay, we are back. Thank you for your patience. I guess we can go ahead and get to the game. Book. Yeah, I'll try to see if there's anything I did wrong with the game, but I mean, I've never encountered a weird problem. It was almost like it was making OBS itself lag. Like, the audio readings and levels, they got really choppy too. So I'm not sure what was with that game. It might have been on my end, but I've never seen a problem like that before. You hope there's more vampire romance in this next chapter. No, God, please no. Watch it just be like a werewolf, except like the exact same thing. I'm gonna die if that's the case. I need more light. Okay, sorry, fake out. Give me one more second. Okay, I am back and now really out of breath, so that's cool. Yeah, so for everyone that wasn't here for the Explore My Body stream, I started reading some tiny short horror stories from a book called Night Terrors. It's like a 1993 book by Jim Murphy, and each chapter is just like its own standalone little horror story. You can read a chapter in about 15 to 30 minutes, so... I used it to fill in this space because Explore My Body was only like 10 minutes long. So, yeah. Alright, so hopefully this isn't going to be too bad. You know what? Maybe I should change the title. I don't want it to be like clickbaity. 1 second. By the way, how is everything? Is my voice coming through? I'm getting a little message on YouTube saying, hey, you know, getting some weird internet issues. It's not streaming smoothly. So I don't know what's going on today. It's like everything that can go wrong is going wrong. Wrong. There we go. Okay, updated the title. The thumbnail, I don't know what to update it to. I'll just throw it on the graveyard picture, I guess. Where did I get that? Okay, 1 second. Well, you know what? I can't find the thumbnails, so it's just gonna have to be that Midnight Scenes thumbnail. It's fine. Nothing else could possibly go wrong at this point. Too late. You've lured us in under false pretenses. Yeah, you guys thought you were gonna get a game. Well, now you get a book. There you go. Oh, gotcha. Yeah. There we go. You know what? I can probably try fitting that to the screen a little bit better. I mean, there we go, whatever. There, that is as good as it's gonna get. Unfortunately, you can't stay, you just popped in to see how everyone is doing. Well, good, this is the stream to miss, because I have botched everything. Yeah, because last chapter, it was peer pressure vampires, like Nick says. This one, I don't know. Okay, alright, here we go. Father, I cannot click the book. Alright, so, we've got chapter 3, Digger in Paradise. So what did you think of the story? Oh, never mind. Forget I asked. I don't know about you, but I hate when people ask me questions like that, since they don't really want to hear the answer. Not a real answer, that is. They want to hear a compliment. Something nice and fuzzy, and I like fuzzy and nice about as much as I like a boil on the tip of my nose. Anyway, if you hated the story, you probably wouldn't have bothered to read this far. Well, no, I mean, we've got hope, I think. Where was I? Oh, yeah. I ran the Garrison Cemetery for a bunch of years, 4 or 5 if the gray matter is still working, and I was doing real good thanks to the yellow fever epidemic. You see, when the fever hit town during my second summer, that was in 1931 if you're adding and subtracting dates, nobody wanted to work in the cemetery. In fact, nobody even came to see their relatives buried. I guess they were afraid they'd catch something from the grave. Town got mean, too. You see, nobody but the oldest people could remember anyone ever getting the fever, so when it started again, everybody wanted to blame someone. That someone turned out to be Jeremiah Ritter. Jeremiah had just gotten back from a year-long trip to places like Burma, Borneo, and Thailand. At first, folks thought he was a hero for traveling the world, even got his picture in the town paper. But when the fever started carrying off people, the town decided Jeremiah had brought it back from one of those hot, steamy places. People got so angry that they ran him out of Garrison, then burned his house to the ground. Can't say I blame them, really. I was even a little worried myself. You hear stories about the fever victims, tongues swollen and turned brown, throwing up stale black blood day and night until their stomachs rupture, and it makes you wonder. Even thought about quitting once or twice. Then the owner doubled my pay to keep me working. I have to admit I liked the money. I was making about 6 times what my father was making at the mill, and it felt real good to be doing that and not even be old enough to vote. Truth was, I liked the work, yellow fever corpses and all. All I had to do was make sure the holes were dug on time and keep the place looking neat. Pretty simple if you think about it. So, of course, I stayed. That is, until things started to get bad. No, not at the cemetery, at home. I think my father was annoyed I was making so much more than him. He started making fun of my job, calling me names like the Garrison Ghoulie and Mr. Graves, clever stuff like that. Then one day he goes and grabs my pay envelope right out of my hand and stomps out to get real drunk. Now, I had already been giving my mother more than half of my pay every week. It's only right that you pay your fair share if you live someplace, but all of my money didn't seem fair to me. Naturally, I said this to my father when he came home. He mumbled something about snot-nosed kids and took a swing at me. Fortunately, the blast that had gotten me my job promotion also taught me the value of ducking down quick, which I did. After missing, my father cursed me a few times and then wobbled off to bed. My mother was there, but she didn't do anything except shrug her shoulders and say, "You know how he gets at the end of the week." That was the day I knew I had to leave. That was also the day I saw an ad in the newspaper for Prospect Hills Cemetery in a town called Guilderland. If you're interested, Guilderland is up near Albany, New York, and was this quiet, tiny village then. They needed someone to run the place, and I figured that digging holes there was probably just like digging holes here. So I wrote the owner, and 3 weeks later, I was hired. I have to admit I was a little nervous about leaving Garrison. After all, family is family, even if they take a swing at you for telling the truth. And working in the Garrison Cemetery felt good, like a really comfortable pair of work boots. But when I got to Prospect Hills, I knew I'd done the right thing. The entire cemetery was a series of grass-covered, gently rolling hills, and there were huge sycamore trees everywhere. All of the gravestones were tall and skinny and made of the whitest white marble you've ever seen. It was beautiful, the white against the green. Best of all, I got to stay free of charge in a brick house smack in the middle of the gravestones. It wasn't much of a house, really, more like a big tool shed with a room on top, but it had a porch in front that overlooked the oldest graves in the place, some going back to before the Revolutionary War. I remember sitting out there during nights in October. As soon as the sun went down, the air turned real cold and fog started moving in. You could actually see it creeping around the gravestones like long, filmy fingers, filling up the little valleys before climbing up the next hill. It was over there, over by a grave so old that the writing on the stone had faded to nearly nothing. That the next story took place. At least, that's what I was told. A hearse driver told it to me one day to pass time, but I never bothered to see if the story was true or not. It didn't matter to me. All I knew was that I had found paradise. All right. So that was chapter 3. I'm guessing that the actual stories are interwoven between his own kind of shorter personal life stories. So chapter 4 is going to be Goodnight, John, Sleep Tight, John. And again, I haven't pre-read any of this. Looks like this one is about 20 pages long. I'm guessing that'll be about 30 minutes, I think. Okay. Chapter 4. Goodnight, John. Sleep tight, John. John stood in the shadows next to the school waiting. John stood in the shadows next to the school, waiting. Where are they? He wondered, impatient and edgy. All 9 of his friends, plus the newcomer, Troy, were supposed to be here at 8:30. He glanced at his watch. Jeez, he muttered. His mother had given him an expensive Swiss watch for his last birthday, one that somehow lit up all the numbers on the dial. It was experimental, she had explained proudly. Well, the experiment failed, John thought. For the past few hours, the numbers had been blinking on and off, like the pulse of some dying old man, and the only way to get it fixed was to send it all the way back to Switzerland. John stepped away from the building to look up Schoolhouse Road for signs of the guys. He'd chosen the meeting spot carefully, a dark, dead end with few houses just 100 yards from the rear entrance to the cemetery. The world is ending. No, there's all these Garfield memes. Once everyone was here, it wouldn't take but 10 minutes or so to get to the cemetery and in place. It was the timing of the whole thing that worried him. His plan depended on precise timing. That's why John had Deke. I almost said Derek. That's why John had Deke trail the caretaker of the cemetery, an old guy known only by his first name, William. According to Deke, William went on only one nightly tour of the grounds. He left his caretaker's house at exactly 5 minutes past 9, rain, sleet, or fog. Most important, he never varied his route. Day after day, he took the same paths, stopped at the same graves. If Deke had this right, and he'd better, John thought, or he'll pay, then John had to maneuver everybody, especially Troy, into their positions at least 5 minutes before this. Better make it 10, John told himself. Deke had a habit of messing things up. The fog had thickened into a dense, impenetrable soup, so his glance up Schoolhouse revealed nothing. Even the bushes 10 feet away looked like hulking, distorted shapes. What else can go wrong, he thought. He had wanted fog, but not this thick. If that old coot William can't see, he might well walk right past Troy, and then what? At that moment, an icy drop of condensed fog splattered on his neck and slid down his back. "Geez!" he shouted, dancing away from the building. He was about to release a string of frustrated curses when he heard a noise and froze. Footsteps, but they were coming from the cemetery. John slithered behind a bush, arched his back, and held his arms straight at his sides. Probably some adult out for a walk, he told himself, so be careful. All he'd have to do is get caught on school property and he'd be laughed out of the gang. Then nothing would stop Troy. He held his breath, listening for the footsteps, hoping he hadn't been spotted. Seconds dragged by, but he didn't hear anything. Dead quiet. Probably waiting for me to make more noise, he cautioned himself. Go slowly. Don't get tricked. Carefully. He leaned around the bush and searched the fog. That was when the hand clamped onto his shoulder from behind. "Oh, geez! Geez!" John screamed. He whirled around to face his attacker, but slipped instead and landed in a puddle. "Hey, man, take it easy. It's just me." An adenoidal voice said, "What? I've never seen that word before." Adenoidal. Okay, hold up. It's not like this is a real reading anyway. Adenoidal. Adenoid? Oh, a massive enlarged lymphatic tissue between the back of the nose and the throat, often hindering speaking and breathing in young children. So I guess it's trying to say he's nasally? I've never seen that word before. Okay. Let's see. Well, we all learned something. That's cool. Who are you? John demanded, jumping to his feet. Then he saw the glow of the cigarette and knew who it was. Deke, you jerk! What do you think you're doing? John lunged at Deke, raising his fist to pound the glowing cigarette into Deke's face. I'll kill you! Hey, John, hey, I'm sorry, man. Deke put his hands up to shield his face and continued pleading, I didn't think I'd scare you or anything, honest. John held back his punch and stood towering over the quivering Deke. He wanted to slam Deke into the ground, pulverize his face to prove he wasn't scared of anything, least of all a tap on the shoulder. But he didn't. He needed Deke right then. Let it go, he told himself. Save it for Troy. Save it all for Troy. What did you do that for, you idiot? John mumbled. And where have you been? And where are the others? And why are you coming from the cemetery? Deke peeked from behind his hands and then straightened when he was sure he wasn't going to be hit. It was Troy, John. He's the one. Troy? Yeah, Troy. He said that to meet you here meant he had to walk all the way around the cemetery, and he said he wasn't going to waste his time doing that. That's what he said, John. Said if you wanted to have a meeting, you could have it in the cemetery. John felt that anger building again. He needed to hit something or someone, but he also knew it wouldn't solve his real problem. And the others? John asked. Is everybody with him? Yeah, Deke said. We sort of met at Ian's, and when he got to the cemetery, Troy said what he said. I don't think everybody wanted to. I know I didn't, John, but you know how it is. Yeah, John said. I know. Troy was winning them over, taking control, taking away John's power. Well, tonight he'd put a stop to it. He reached into the shadows and grabbed the shovel he had leaned against the wall. Where's your shovel? This is all I could sneak out of the garage, he answered, producing a garden trowel from his back pocket. Great. You're going to dig up a grave with a lousy trowel. Brilliant. My father was all over me tonight, wanted to know where I was going, who... Save it. John shook his head and left the shelter of the bushes. Come on, let's get moving. Sure, John, sure, whatever you say. For several minutes, the two walked down the street in complete silence. All the while, John was inhaling air and trying to calm himself. Time was running out. His time. He had to make this chance count. To do that, he had to be in complete control of himself and the situation. That reminded him of the caretaker's schedule, so John looked at his watch. It was still blinking away, broken and useless. What time is it? John asked impatiently. It's... Deke's watch didn't glow, so he had to hold it an inch away from his eyes. 8:40, I think. John let loose a string of curses and whacked the sidewalk hard with his shovel. There's still time, Deke said quietly. John and his friends had been hanging around together since elementary school. The Terrible 10, they had called themselves back then. They were too old for silly nicknames now, but they were still a tight-knit unit with John calling all the shots, mainly because he could outmuscle everyone. Then Troy appeared 3 weeks ago, a new kid in town. Immediately, he began questioning John's decisions, making sarcastic remarks whenever John said or suggested anything. With each jab, John could feel his power over the others lessening. Ordinarily, John would have squashed anyone who acted like this in a flash, but Troy was different. He was 3 inches taller than John and had the strength of a bodybuilder. A direct challenge would get John a mouthful of teeth, and worse, would leave no doubt that someone else was in charge. No, he'd have to outthink Troy, make him look like a fool, in order to regain control. The best part of it all was that Troy had suggested the idea himself without even knowing it. John felt himself smile at the thought. For some reason or other, the name Asia Andrew Bingham came up while the guys were talking, and Troy didn't seem to know who he was. It was a tired old story, but Chris told it as if it were today's headlines. In the old days, the story went, people were buried with their jewelry still on, gold rings, pearl necklaces, ruby brooches, whatever they loved to wear. Thousands and thousands of dollars in precious metals and gems had gone to the grave with dead owners, sealed in the fetid darkness for eternity. One night, a couple of locals decided to relieve the dead of the burden of their jewelry, and they began their treasure hunt by digging up the grave of a recently deceased man by the name of Asia Andrew Bingham. Asia had been a wealthy dandy noted for his fine clothes, expensive boots, and imported hats, but his trademark about town was a carved gold walking cane topped with a glittering diamond. Asia never went anywhere without his cane, and everyone, including the two grave robbers, assumed that meant his coffin, too. Well, these two men dug into the soft earth and uncovered the wooden coffin in less than an hour. They used their shovels to pry off the top, then held their lanterns over to view their newfound fortune. It was there, of course, but so was Asia. His skin was already an ugly yellow-blue, his nails long and claw-like, and his eyes wide open and glaring at the intruders. No one really knew what happened after this. The men were never seen again, disappeared as if they'd been sucked into the earth. The only trace of them ever found was ragged bits of both men's clothes, and blood smeared all over the empty coffin that had once been Asia's eternal resting place. They say, Chris had concluded his story, that opening his grave released the spirit of Asia Andrew Bingham into the night, and that he walks the cemetery to this day, guarding the graves from anyone who might try to rob them. It wasn't anything Troy said after the story that alerted John to the other boy's weak spot. It was a look in Troy's eyes, almost as if he believed all of the hooey about spirits. He's scared, really scared, John realized, and instantly launched the challenge. Let's find his grave and dig it up to see if Asia's bones are there, John suggested. Everybody had protested the idea, especially Troy. Grave robbing was a crime, a felony even. You could do serious time for playing around with bones. But then John had asked what everyone was afraid of. The evil spirit of the cane-wielding Asia Andrew Bingham. What's the matter? Are you chicken or what? This last had been said to the whole group, but John had been staring directly at Troy. You remember what you have to do? John asked Deke as they entered the cemetery. You'll have to move fast if you're going to get Troy into position. Sure, John, it's easy. You're going to head directly toward the caretaker's house, so Troy will probably hang back a little, like he's not taking orders from you. Everybody else acts like they don't know where Asia Andrew Bingham. You got that, Deke? It's important. It'll get his attention. Yeah, that's right. Everybody acts dumb, so I can point it out to Troy. He'll want to be a big deal and be the one to dig it up, and I'll help him a little, but mostly I'll act scared and say I hear noises and stuff. Right? And, oh yeah, so we do this a while, but I listen for the signal, that bird whistle you do, 'cause that means William is on the way, and I have to beat it without letting on that anything's happening. Good, John said. He could see it clearly. Troy digging away, distracted and annoyed by Deke's whining, not knowing that the caretaker always made a special stop at Bingham's grave on his rounds. At the very least, Troy would have to make an undignified sprint to escape the old man. But if John was lucky, the caretaker would use his shotgun, putting a load of rock salt into the seat of the fleeing Troy. He'd never live that down. They made their way around several gravestones. Where are they, anyway? John asked. I left them over by the stone bench, the one with the angels carved on the arms and the... Yeah, Deke, I know. The fog seemed even denser in the cemetery, especially in the valleys between the hills. The moisture made the grass slippery, and John had to grab onto gravestones to keep from falling. They went over a few more hills before they heard voices and laughter in the distance. The next instant, the shape of the guys materialized, standing around the stone bench. While no facial features were very clear, John could tell that it was Troy sitting on the bench as if he were a king holding court. Once again, his anger flared. "Keep it down, you guys," John barked when they got to the bench. "William might hear you." There was sudden and absolute silence for a second. Then Troy said, "Relax, John. Nothing's going to bite you out here." Troy punctuated his remark with a chuckle, which some of the others imitated. "I'm not kidding. That old fart isn't deaf, and he really will use his shotgun." "I don't think John is worried about any old human with a shotgun," Troy tossed in. I think John is worried about the evil spirits that haunt this graveyard." Troy made a low, mournful howling noise that ended in hysterical laughter. The other guys joined in, a little too easily and loudly as far as John was concerned. John was so angry he could feel his veins pumping, and his breath came in short gasps. If it was anybody else, he would have answered with a fist and then maybe taken on a couple of others just to set everybody straight. Save it, he told himself. Save it all. "Look," John said as calmly as possible, "we better make up a plan and get going." "Plan? What's to plan?" Troy asked, getting up from the bench, his shovel clanking against the stone and pushing past John. "We're going to find Asia Andrew Bingham's grave and take a peek at his bones. I say we stop wasting time and get going." John stood, watching as Troy's body melted into the dark and fog. He's just acting brave in front of the guys, but that'll change when he comes face to face with William and his shotgun. A few of the others took a step or two to follow Troy, but then turned to see what John would do. Good, John thought. I still have a chance. "Ian, why don't you take Chris, Eddie, and Brian and look over that way to the right?" Ian paused for a second or two and then said, "Yeah, sure, John. Sounds good to me." He hoisted his shovel over his shoulder. "Come on, guys. Scott and Elliot, check out the stones to the left. Mike, you and Jeremy, there are some really old graves behind us by the fence." When everyone had disappeared, John turned to Deke. "You're gonna have to move fast, you hear? And make sure it sounds natural or he'll suspect something." "Don't worry, John," Deke said eagerly. "I've been practicing what I'd say since you told me, and I even—" "Stop yammering, Deke, and get going. And don't screw up, you hear?" Yeah, John, I hear you." Deke trotted down the path Troy had just taken, his trowel clutched in his right hand. He's hopeless, John thought, but he does what I say. Suddenly, John noticed how quiet the cemetery had become. No breeze stirred the leaves, no night birds called to each other. It really was a little creepy being all alone, surrounded by gravestones that stood like sentinels on guard. A noise to his right made John spin, and he was certain he saw something float through the air and then vanish. It wasn't just a stray wisp of fog, more ghost-like. "Stop it," John cautioned himself. "Probably just a bat, and not the vampire kind either." He turned and began moving up the path. A feeling of satisfaction came over him then, knowing that the plan was finally in motion. Not far along, he came to the large clump of laurel bushes that concealed Asia's grave. As he passed, he heard voices. "I can't see anything," Troy was grumbling. "You sure this is it?" "Pretty sure," Deke replied. "I kind of felt the old writing, see? And there were 3 names and one had a big A at the beginning. This better be it, or I'll—" John moved along. A dumb slab of muscle had fallen for it, just as John had expected. In a couple of minutes, he'd shove Deke aside and start digging. And then it was William's turn to perform. A little way up the path, John caught a faint glimpse of lights in the distance. William's house. Next, he came to the big sycamore whose roots snaked out across the path. This was it. Behind the tree, the hill rose sharply. John could hide behind a gravestone at the top of the hill and still see William coming down the path. Once the signal was given, all he had to do was pivot his body around to watch the show Troy and William were going to put on. He was halfway up the hill when his feet slid out from under him, and he went down with a thud and a grunt. A string of curses filled his head as he struggled to pull himself up. That's when he saw it. 30 feet to his left, something scurried between the stones. There had even been a faint noise this time, the patting of feet on damp leaves. Dang, Michael Roberts with the 10 monies. This reminds me of primary school, drawing while the teacher read a book to us. So relaxing. Yeah, I miss story time. I honestly do. It's not really the same when I listen to audiobooks either, is the thing. I guess maybe it's because you're not the only one listening. Like, there's a bunch of other people listening and making comments on it. I don't know. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. Like I said, I don't pre-read these. And there are going to be mistakes. It is live. So yeah, hopefully everyone's having fun. Okay. His first thought that, you know what, I'm going to read the last paragraph because I kind of, you know what, let me get some water too. Dang it. You give me money and then I get distracted. Yeah, but I'd love to do more of these. I know there were a lot of short horror story, collections, especially published in the 90s. So if and when I do finish this one, I can have a look for other ones, I think. Actually, they got a bunch of Nightmare Hall, like in the back of the book. It has a bunch of them. Okay. He was halfway up the hill when his feet slid out from under him, and he went down with a thud and a grunt. A string of curses filled his head as he struggled to pull himself up. That's when he saw it. 30 feet to his left, something scurried between the stones. There had even been a faint noise this time, the patting of feet on damp leaves. His first thought was that it was William, taking a new route that would mess up the plan. But William never, ever changed his route according to Deke. Probably just some animal, a raccoon or stray dog. The cemetery was a regular zoo at night. John pulled himself up the hill and found a good stone to kneel behind. Just in time, too. As John settled in, he heard a door bang shut, and then heavy boots clomping down wooden stairs. Yes, John thought, yes, it's going to happen. He could give the signal now, so Deke would be sure to get away. But Deke had seemed so wired tonight that John really didn't trust his acting ability. Deke might panic and let Troy know that something was going on. No, he wouldn't signal until William was at the laurel bushes. Deke might take some rock salt, but he was expendable if it meant that there was no way for Troy to escape. He heard the noise among the gravestones again, this time circling around behind him. That wasn't any animal either. The sound was too loud, too much like some clumsy kid trying to tiptoe and failing miserably. Maybe one of the guys had wandered onto the hill by mistake? Just then, a flash of color in front caught his attention. What's going on? He wondered. John craned his neck to see all around him. He couldn't be sure, but he felt as if the gravestones had come alive with tiny movements here and there. 5 or 6 at least. The movements were too organized, too deliberate. John didn't like the way it felt. His first thought was to call out to see if it was the guys from the gang, but he couldn't do that without giving away his position to William. Instinctively, he pressed closer to the cold marble. Seconds dragged along until John heard footsteps, this time coming from below him on the path. He peered around the side of the stone and saw William, shotgun nestled under his arm, ambling through the fog. "Hurry up," John urged William. "They're waiting for you." But instead of hurrying up, William stopped suddenly and gazed all around. He had heard something too, John was sure. Otherwise, why was he searching the shadows and fog so intensely? John edged behind the stone. If I don't move, don't make a sound, he'll move along. Leaves rustled behind John again, and before he could look around, there was a hiss. then a loud, ear-vibrating concussion as an M... Okay, let me try that again. The leaves rustled behind John again, and before he could look around, there was a hiss, then a loud, ear-vibrating concussion as an M80 detonated. John fell against the gravestone and was struggling to regain his balance when a string of firecrackers landed at his feet, bouncing along the ground in a jittery dance as each exploded. Through all the noise, John heard a whispered command. Move it, let's get out of here. Troy's voice. You! William's harsh voice shouted at John from the path. You up there, I see you. Stay right there or else. Another string of firecrackers landed, their peppery explosions illuminating John clearly. William was already charging up the hill in John's direction, his big boots digging into the soft earth and providing good traction. John had only caught a glimpse of William, but he noticed that the old man had shifted the shotgun and was holding it in two hands now, the finger of his right hand on the trigger. John tossed his shovel aside and began running. Stop, boy, stop! William continued to shout. His voice seemed nearer through the fog. Though the fog distorted sounds, made them bounce and echo in an odd way, so John couldn't tell how close he was exactly. You can't get away, you hear? John dodged around several gravestones, hitting one sharply with his hand, bumping another with his hip. A white fog and white gravestones seemed to melt together, his body moving too fast for his eyes to adjust and pick out safe routes. He was about to slow up some when he heard keys clinking together not more than 20 feet behind him. William's keys. He pumped his arms wildly. He'd been set up by Troy, and Jeremy and Ian and all the others were in on it. Even Deke. I'll get Deke for this, he promised himself. I'll get them all. He came to a patch of thin fog on the other side of the hill, and John flew down it smoothly and up the next. The sheer abandon of his running, the wild speed gave him confidence. No way an old man could keep up with him. A few more fast bursts like that and he'd escape. As he came to the top, William's shotgun roared. Rock salt pinged and burst on the gravestones nearby. John ducked his head, but not low enough. A few pellets caught him in the back of the neck. He lurched forward, off balance, his skin stinging painfully. I'll get every one of them. Every one. Stay there, boy, William shouted from the foot of the hill. John heard the snap of metal. Darn kids, William muttered. Should lock you all away. A second blast was fired, and this one caught him square in the legs. 1,000 bee stings tearing into his flesh, making it burn. He felt his legs buckle, his body lurching forward out of control while his arms flailed. He was about to go down in a heap when a strong hand grasped the arm of his jacket and pulled him upright. This way, a voice hissed. John took a series of stumbling steps, still being supported by his savior. They went down the hill, then cut across the next at an angle, sidestepping gravestones easily. Deke? John gasped. Darkness and fog made the shape pulling him along black, imprecise. He looked short, like Deke, and had the same skinny build. But something was wrong. A powerful odor, a mix of damp mold and dirt, stuck in John's nostrils. That you, Deke? Hurry, the voice repeated, sounding hollow and distant. The crushing grip on John's arm tightened, and the figure picked up speed, forcing John to run. Who are you? John asked. That was when John noticed the cane. John tried to yank his arm free, but the figure's grip became vice-like. Let go! John screamed. Let me go! John dug his heels in, but the figure seemed to lift him off the ground and haul him over the top of the next hill. John swung at the figure, but his fist only grazed the shoulder and did no harm. Let go, you son of a... Before he could complete his sentence, the figure whipped John around to face him, released its hold on John's arm, and instantly, with a movement so fast John didn't realize what had happened, used that hand to grab John's throat. The fingers felt sharp and brittle as they squeezed and cut off his air supply. Then the figure drew John's face toward it. "What's going on?" John wondered, his head spinning. He tried to see his attacker, but the face was a blur. Then, as if the fog had suddenly cleared, the features became more and more distinct. In the time it took to gasp, John saw more than he wanted: the matted clumps of the hair on the side of the head, the dripping strips of rotted, discolored flesh, eyes cloudy white and oozing, the jawbone exposed and barely joined to the skull by tendon and muscle. He was staring at a living skeleton, Asia Andrew Bingham's. John snapped his head back in horror and screamed, "What do you want? Help! Let me go! Help!" He struggled frantically to break free, but it was no use. Asia Andrew Bingham's one hand held John firmly in place. Asia pulled John's face to within an inch of his, an act that caused John to become mute. Asia held up his cane so that its head was close to John's left eye. Even in the fog, John could see the gleam of gold and the sparkle of a diamond. Then, in a voice laden with 200 years of decay and putrefaction and loathing, Asia uttered the words, "Grave robber." But I... The words came out as a series of gasping, frightened croaks. "I was only trying..." With an irritated snarl, Asia hurled John's body forward, and John found himself plunging down a shallow pit and crashing into an open casket at the bottom. His entire body ached with pain. His head throbbed, and he was gasping for every ounce of breath he could suck into his lungs. But I was only... Too late. Asia had already flipped the casket lid closed and leaped on top of it. A moment later, he began driving in nails along the edge of the pine lid, one after the other, each about 3 inches apart. Through the rough boards, John could hear Asia digging into his pockets for nails, could hear him breathe the words, "Grave robber," over and over again. "Let me out!" John screamed, pushing and kicking at the lid with all the strength he could find. Help me, Deke, Ian, help! I'm in here, God, help! Jeremy, Scott, help! Help me, you guys, help me! Asia's got me in here, can't you hear me?" The pounding of the nails continued unabated until Asia had done a complete circuit of the lid. "God, can't anyone hear me?" John managed to gasp between gulps of air. "Can't anybody stop him, please?" Inside the coffin was black, the air warm and close. Particles of dirt sprinkled between the cracks and onto John's face when Asia tossed his hammer aside and stood up. "See, you got him." "Oh, see, you got him," John heard a muffled ancient voice say. "William?" John screamed. "Is that you? Can you hear me? I'm in here. Get me out." John kicked and punched at the lid. "Can you hear me?" "That him?" William asked. "Grave robber," came Asia's reply. "You can't do this to me. I'll... A shovelful of dirt hit the top of the coffin, and John went quiet. "You planned to rob Asia's grave. You were the leader of them," William said. "I keep this grave open for the likes of you, and now you have to pay the price." "No, you don't understand." Another shovelful of dirt hit the lid. Stop it, let me explain. We weren't going to rob any graves." Another and another load of dirt pounded into place. "Honest, you're making a mistake. Listen to me." "Oh my God, John Pizzone with 100 monies." Gee, that's super nice. I don't see a message, but I do appreciate it. I hope everyone's enjoying the reading. Honest, you're making a mistake. Listen to me. "Save it, son," William called down into the grave. "I ran your friends off long ago. No one is going to help you now. No one." "But we weren't going to do anything." Tears had begun to sting John's eyes, and his words came out as halting whispers. "Really, you've got to believe me. We were only..." "Grave robber," Asia hissed, the words cold and leaden. "Oh, John," William said. "That's your name, right? I heard one of those kids say it before they ran off." "Yeah," John said, sniffling. "What of it?" "I just wanted to say good night, John, and, sleep tight, John." This was followed by 2 distinct laughs and the rhythmic sound of dirt filling up the grave, one shovelful at a time. John screamed some more, but in a few minutes the sound of dirt hitting the coffin disappeared, and John, exhausted, gave up calling for help. He took a few gulps of warm, moist air and realized they weren't satisfying his need for oxygen. His heart pounded and sweat trickled across his face. Got to do something, he thought, but his brain did not offer any suggestions at all. Instead, it kept saying, "More air, need more air, need it fast." "Don't think," John commanded. Do something, anything, push." That's it. He had to push, but with more force than he could generate while on his back. He could roll over and, hunched on his knees, use his arms and legs together. Worth a try. But when he tried to move, his shoulder jammed against the lid of the coffin and would go no farther. He fell onto his back and closed his eyes. "What did I do?" he wondered. "I don't deserve this. Maybe one of the guys will tell what happened and someone will see the fresh grave and maybe, it's possible, but they probably won't say a word until, but they probably wouldn't say a word until he was officially reported as missing, and that might not be until tomorrow. His already labored breathing and the fuzzy way his brain was putting thoughts together told him that His already labored breathing and the fuzzy way his brain was putting thoughts together told him that tomorrow would be too late. All I wanted to do was embarrass Troy, stay in control. Instead, he opened his eyes and saw it, a glimmer of light, faint and distant, down near his waist, promising an escape route. Even the tiniest crack might provide a gulp of sweet, fresh air, enough to survive the night on, enough to hope on. Groggily, John craned his neck up as much as the coffin lid would allow to get a clear view. He would have laughed at what he saw, except that he had no strength. There on his arm, his watch glowed, the numbers on the dial flashing again and again and again, like the pulse of a dying old man. All right, and that was chapter 4. Well, that was actually way better than this freaking Twilight chapter. Am I even allowed to say that it was a Twilight chapter? I mean, this book was written in 1993. That whole high school vampire thing was ahead of the Twilight game. Well, that was sad. Yeah, I don't think the punishment necessarily fit the crime, but hey, you know what? Horror isn't always about karma, you know? Okay, and how did the gravedigger in the present come to know all this? Something does not add up. Well, he says he heard the story from a hearse driver. I mean, that's what he says. You know, what are you gonna do, not believe Mr. Gravedigger here? So John just became a worm? He dead. It's officially an F for John. Yeah, and thank you so much for, let me see here, scroll back up. Joe Pinzone. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Maybe it's Pinzone. I don't know, but thank you very much for the donation. That was super nice. Well, let's see. How you guys feeling? It's only been about 55 minutes. I could get some water. We could try another chapter if you want. Oh, actually, you know what? Here's a good little break. Oh, you know what? Let me change songs, too. It's been like 50 minutes of this one. It's a good background song, and I think it lasts. The nice thing about background music is that it does take a while before it starts getting on your nerves, but I don't want to overuse it. Let's see. Yeah, I guess this'll do. Technically, it's an unreleased track from Silent Hill, so I don't think I'll get into too much trouble. Also, I did mess with it a little bit. There we go. Cool. Okay, so here's something interesting. You know what I love about some of these horror books is that the back of the book, you can, see other stuff. And they got a bunch of these. So apparently, I guess this is Nightmare Hall, or maybe Nightmare Hall is just, a separate series advertising. But we got The Silent Scream, The Roommate, Deadly Attraction, The Wish, The Scream Team. God, I freaking love 90s horror books. I I'm sure, some of you in the chat do as well. This weird affinity, even though I never even bothered to read most of the books that I found in the back of these. It was fun even looking at them. Hitchhiker, Hit and Run, The Girlfriend, The Dead Girlfriend, Call Waiting, The Boyfriend, Blind Date, The Babysitter 2, The Babysitter 3. This is amazing. The Snowman. We got to do some of these winter themed ones for Christmas. Now that I'm getting a little more brave, I guess. Because I could never, I always wanted to read, but the problem is I was always so scared of messing up. And you know what? Messing up isn't that bad. I mean, yeah, it sucks, and I want to just chastise myself, and it kind of messes with the flow a little bit, but that's what life is all about. The only way you get better is if you keep doing it. So I'm really glad that I went to streaming. That's the only way I'd... Another one. Okay, people want another one. Joe Pinzone, gotta go, guys. Have a good stream. Yep. Thank you so much for donating. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And again, the live stream will be archived, so if you do have to go, no worries. You can always, have a look at it on the channel. It'll be archived for your viewing pleasure, I guess. Okay. People say another one. Let me get some chapstick before my lips just dissolve. For anyone wondering, this is a track from Shattered Memories. I think it's technically there's two versions of this song. I think it's like Searching the Past or something, but I chucked it into Audacity and gave it a little pulse stretch, just in case. It didn't seem like Silent Hill copy strikes its own music that much, especially not unreleased tracks from later games, but just in case. Which is your fave so far, Cursory? Stories? Story-wise, I guess that one was pretty good. If you're talking about Silent Hill games, I don't know, 3. I really liked Shattered Memories. I'm not saying, if you look at it not necessarily as a successor, but as a spin-off, then I think that one actually is really, really good. It got a lot of hate, and I understand it was something different, but if you look at it as a spin-off, maybe not entirely related to Silent Hill as a whole, except, like what's the word for a different way things could have gone, then yeah, I like that one a lot. But yeah, Silent Hill 3, and 1 and 2, I guess. Not Downpour, though. Are we listening to scary stories now? Yeah, I'm reading a few short, bite-sized horror stories. I guess I could do one more chapter. It's another Gravedigger chapter. It's only like 3 pages, so it's probably only going to be about 5 minutes. What about 4? Oh, The Room. Love-hate relationship with that one. I think it's good, but it shouldn't have been a Silent Hill game, in my opinion. It just didn't feel like one. And I have some problems with the combat. If it had been standalone and not necessarily connected to Silent Hill, I think people would regard it as a classic, in my opinion. But then again, I think one of the appeals of Silent Hill is that it doesn't necessarily have to always be Alessa Gillespie, however you say it. Was it Alessa? Cheryl and Alessa. Yeah, I think it's Alessa. It doesn't necessarily always have to be her in Pyramid Head. I think what they hinted at in Silent Hill is that it's different depending on whoever's there. Whether you're guilty or not, or you just got sucked into it, it changes. The antagonists change. The nemesis changes. Like, Pyramid Head was James's nemesis, right? So, okay, I don't have a lot of problems seeing him show up in games where he's not necessarily supposed to. To me, he's like the mascot. Same thing with the nurses. I'm not going to complain. But it can be different depending on who's experiencing it. So the fact that it was so different, could have just been a manifestation of Walter and the apartment, and then, wait, which one was the protagonist and which one was the serial killer? Okay, either of them, both of them, you know what I mean? I don't know. Wait, what? See if Midnight Scenes works? It didn't, unfortunately. I tried it quite a bit. Didn't really. Downpour stream when I decide to torture myself. The Room ain't so bad. Yeah. It was flawed, but I think it had a lot to offer. Okay. Chapter 5. Paradise Lost. No, the caretaker in the story wasn't me, and I never saw old Asia's bones either, alive or dead. Talk about crypt breath. But I like what happened to that kid. Served him right, if you ask me. It's hard enough keeping a cemetery neat without a bunch of kids digging it up. So anyway, I worked in Prospect Hills Cemetery for a long time, so long that I can't even remember how many years it was. Then one day, the pastor who ran the First Dutch Reformed Church, they were the ones who owned Prospect Hills, came to tell me the cemetery had been sold to some local businessman. Seems membership in the church had fallen to about 5 or 6, so they couldn't afford to keep either the church or the cemetery going. Don't worry, he said. The new owners promised that everything would go on as usual. I don't know about you, but when anyone tells me not to worry, the first thing I do is worry. And I was right, too. They hadn't owned the place a week when they announced plans to build houses on all of the unused land. Ask me. Dead residents are nicer than living ones. The dead never complain about taxes or noise or their neighbors. Hardly ever, anyway. Next thing I know, I'm traveling south down to Summit, New Jersey, where they were opening a new cemetery and needed someone to run it. This was my first trip outside of New York, so I felt like I was going to a foreign land. Summit was okay, loaded with big old houses, massive trees, and winding streets. But the cemetery, that was something else. They'd gone and cut down every tree on the land, leveled all the hills, and put in a boring grid pattern of roads. Place was empty, of course, not a gravestone in sight, so it looked more like they were fixing to build a housing development than a graveyard. The worst was that they wanted me to use a backhoe to dig graves. I remember my first day working, sitting on the backhoe, the engine rumbling and kicking out black, oily-smelling smoke, and looking over the empty cemetery. Didn't feel right, not at all. So I jumped off the machine, left it running, quit, and started looking again. I was lucky about jobs back then. Either that or grave digging wasn't on the top of everybody's career list. A week later, I had a job over in West Orange, another Jersey town at a place called Holy Conception Cemetery. The second I saw it, I knew it was just right for me. It had hills for a start, some nasty steep too, and trees, lots of them. Oh, they weren't well cared for. Ugh, they weren't well cared for. Oh, they weren't well cared. I did it again, weld. Sometimes you just hit these problem paragraphs. Lots of them. Oh, they weren't well cared for. Okay, one more time. Oh, they weren't well cared for. Beautiful sycamores, like at Prospect Hills, but they were big and rangy, mostly red oaks and maples and a few lindens here and there. I wouldn't call the place pretty, neither, not by a long shot. The grass was patchy, with hard-baked clay in between, and no one had bothered to collect leaves or twigs for years. Even the gravestones seemed tired and neglected, just dirty gray slabs. One whole section of gravestones was leaning at an odd angle, as if the wind had blown them all back on their heels. But the place had some good points. There were no machines to bother with, and I got to live in this 8-room house inside the cemetery. Only condition was I was to share the place with a former caretaker who had retired and was allowed to live there free of charge for as long as he wanted. The day I was going to move in, I knocked on the door of the house even though I already had a key. Guess I wanted to show the old man some respect. When the door opened, I found myself staring at this old black man. He was short and hunched over, leaning on a crutch because his right leg was missing. He had the whitest hair I'd ever seen. Not much, but white, and the darkest, most leathery skin you can imagine. You could tell that he'd spent most of his life outdoors doing hard labor. I'd never seen a black man before, not up in the country where I came from, so I must have eyed him funny-like for a long time. That's when he poked me hard in the chest with a long, bony finger. "Don't fool yourself, son," he said by way of greeting. "You'll be dead and dust long before this old dog is gone." Of course, I liked him right away. He took me inside, showed me around, and then we settled in front of the fire. It was the middle of spring, but a cold wind had swept in, the last of winter, and it felt real good to lean in close to the flames. He told me his name was Alan A. Crinslow, and I asked him what the A in the middle stood for. Alan, he replied. I must have looked confused because he added, Alan, with 2 L's. My parents didn't have any learning, see, so they weren't sure how to spell it. Gave me both, figuring that one must be right and I could figure it out on my own later. He smiled at that, then started to laugh. I laughed too, though I wasn't sure whether he was putting me on or not, and I never asked either. He was a good storyteller too, better than Clement even, which is saying a lot. Told stories about anything you could think of. The ghost that pushed over the gravestones, the way the trees talked to each other at Halloween, the huge dog that prowled the cemetery whenever there was a full moon. You name it, and Alan Allen had a story. In case you couldn't figure it out, it was Alan Allen who told me the next story. Swore it was true, too. Said I could go to the library and look it up if I wanted. Of course, he had this smile on his face the whole time, and when he finished telling it, he laughed and laughed and laughed. All right, that is the end of chapter 5. And after that is chapter 6, which is going to be, how long does that go for? 68 to 90. Okay, so about another 30 pages. I think we'll go ahead and call it quits there. It's a shame because the grave digger story really does kind of set up the following, story. But yeah, I think an hour of story time is good enough. How to Make Friends 101. Yeah, just poke them in the chest and tell them they're gonna die before you. Good stuff. Yeah, Allinson, wait, what was his last name? His last name wasn't Allinson. Oh, Crinslow. Yeah, Allen Crinslow. But yeah, I like Allen Allinson better. The stream you were expecting, but this was good too. Yeah, it's a real shame about, what was it called? Midnight Scenes. I was really looking forward to playing that. The art style looked really good. But... okay, let me try it one more time. Yeah, I don't know, and the thing is, I'm quite sure it wasn't me. Because I've never had this happen with a game before, and I closed out the game, I booted up Explore My Body. That game ran just fine. It's just this one that seems to have a weird choppiness. Yeah, it not only kills the frames, but it actually seems to lag OBS itself, which is weird. Hope we get to play the game some other time. Yeah, especially because it's got 2 episodes to it. Yeah, and as much as I'd love to do this, it just, yeah, it's at 11 frames per second, unfortunately. Your favorite story is still Peer Pressure Vamps, but those were good too. Yeah, look at that. That ain't gonna do. Okay, well, it was a good try. I'm not sure what the problem on that is. Well, I do want to thank you guys for stopping by for the spooky stream. Hopefully it was fun. I've noticed that there aren't so many people... oh, God. Yeah, that's weird. It tanked the live stream connection again. Okay, I've got a green light. I got a green light, so it's back now. I know you guys can hear me now, but gee. Yeah, that's weird. I don't know what's with that game, but whenever I start it, not only does the frame rate lag, but OBS itself lags, and then the connection has issues. What is that game running that it would need to do that? I still think maybe it's mining Bitcoin or something, and my system's like, nope, can't take it. Okay, well, anyway, yeah, I've noticed, to continue my thought before the stream had an issue, I've noticed that people aren't doing creepypastas the way they used to, which is a real shame because that's one of the leading things that was going on that made me get into, YouTubing in general. I really like the scary games and the creepypastas. Quite a few people still play scary games, but... was creepypastas just a fad? It wasn't to me. I liked it. I mean, scary stories are timeless, and essentially all creepypastas were just kind of amateur campfire stories in a shorter, cheaper format just spread around online. but nobody really does creepypastas anymore. I mean, I'm sure some people do, but it seems more of a niche. And that makes me really sad, because to me it wasn't a fad. Is there any info online? We got a few minutes. I guess I could look. Midnight Scenes. Yeah, and I don't know why it would lag, because OBS, it tells you my CPU is, at 1%. That's like phenomenal. Like right now it's at 0.6%, just by playing some music and stuff and streaming. I'm not seeing anything. Oh well. And it's a Unity game, so it's not the engine necessarily. Since I've discovered you, I make sure to make it to each of your streams. They're really chill. Thanks for the fun content. Yeah, and remember, if you can't make it, no worries there. But it is nice that, you're having fun with the streams, and it's entertaining enough to want to come back again and again. So that means I'm doing something right, which is nice. Yeah, you love listening to creepypastas and some no-sleep stories. Yeah, exactly. But I don't really see creepypastas around anymore. So, I don't know, it's sad. Some creepypastas were really good, but there were too many that were not so good. Yeah, but see, that's like the mixed bag of it. They're essentially just internet campfire stories. And you had some that were phenomenally bad, Jeff the Killer. And then some that were really, really good. And part of the fun was just sifting through them to see what, you liked. And I think part of the fun things was that, you could rely on YouTubers to kind of sift through the bad ones and then just read the good ones. So, yeah, and if you wanted a long, meaty one, you had that. If you wanted a short, kind of just spook, then you had that. There was a game Markiplier played that was a sort of narrative choose-your-adventure scary game. Really? Was it? I've heard of that. It sounds familiar if you've got the name. That's one thing I've been thinking about. The first time I read a book live was, I think, about a week ago, and it actually worked out. And then I did it again today, and it's actually working out. I only flub, I'd say, about maybe 5% of it. I was thinking maybe I should buy off of Amazon some of my old choose-your-own-adventure books. I used to check those out at the library all the time when I was in elementary school. And I was thinking if I could find some way to set up an easy polling system for like streams, or at least on Discord, I don't know. Maybe I could even make it a Patreon thing. I could read and narrate a choose-your-own-adventure book, and then, leave it to the chat to poll which choices to make, and then, we're probably going to die. I think 2/3 of the endings are gruesome death scenes, because they got gruesome. I think that might be a fun thing to do. So I've been thinking of poking around on Amazon and seeing if I could buy the books for real cheap. A lot of these 90s books, you can get them for like $3, and then maybe like another $3 for shipping. So pretty cheap, all. Oh, Buried. That was the name of the creepy narrative one. Buried. Okay. I'll have to look into that then. That's exactly up my alley. You might have brought it up before, but now I'll write it down. Some of the best creepypastas are on the border on conspiracy theories. Yeah. They get the same rep as fan fiction. Yeah, just because it's written by some amateur, with a computer doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad quality. Sure, a lot of people are using, but I like to think that all the edgy teenagers that wrote bad creepypastas, when they were 14, it was probably a good gateway into becoming better and becoming more competent, because I can't think of anybody that just sits down and then does a masterpiece. Unless you're like some savant or prodigy like Da Vinci or something, I don't know. But yeah, it's learning experience. Like even me and my narration skills, I'm really not very comfortable doing voices, and it's really hard for me to put emotion into the voices, but every time I practice, I like to think that I get a little bit better. I can't listen to my own voice, so, I imagine if I go and I listen to my audiobook narration, when I first tried to do R.L. Stein's Trapped about 4 years ago or so, I like to think that if I compare that to the one I've done, because I am rereading it to make it a bit better, I like to think the narration would have improved a bit. But yeah, your reading was pretty good. Yeah, that's good. That's a relief. When Ben Drowned first dropped, it was pasted along to me by a friend. Yeah, Ben Drowned, that's a classic. Oh God, adventure books and Back to Elementary School. I liked those. Those were brutal. You were spooked. You were 16 at the time of Ben Drowned. Yeah. You're still down for an Ezra podcast of scary stories, ARGs, and spooky stuff. Yeah, I don't know if I have the charisma to carry a podcast per se, but, maybe we could do one every other week or every month or something. At the very least, I could have you guys call in and make content for me. Wouldn't be surprised if some creepypastas became legit conspiracies for some people. Well, I definitely know of one. I think it was Wang that actually talked about it. But there was a creepypasta that, I think... Oh, actually, maybe it wasn't a creepypasta, it was just a 4chan post, but it was supposedly the coordinates to a buried body. But the problem was it was buried on, military land, on, a testing zone for, fire, or not gunfire, but I guess bombings or something. So that one became a bit of conspiracy theory. I guess it wasn't a creepypasta. Unless you count, I guess, Pale Luna was kind of related to that. Pale Luna was one of my favorites. Let's see. Isn't SCP a huge collection of creepypastas in a sense? Yeah, I remember how it was when I first stumbled upon SCP. I just started reading them from 1 to 100. I think I got into the hundreds. I'm not sure. Ulron with the 5 monies. I'll match Joe's donation if you do an Australian accent. Okay, I only know 2 phrases that kind of make it sound like Australian. Let me see here. There we go. It's not the sentence, but when you say it out loud, it sounds like Australian. Rise up lights. Apparently it's supposed to sound like razor blades, but it's spelled rise up lights. But when you say it out loud, it kind of sounds like Australian rise up lights. That's all I got. Oh, there's also, let me see here. Answer the fine. Answer the fine. It's supposed to be answer the phone. That's all I got for you. Sorry, man. Let's see. You'll match Joe's donation. Oh, wait, no, you don't actually have to match his donation, though. I was just, yeah. I'm not good with accents, though. I can't even tell what anyone's speaking half the time. Don't sell yourself, Ulrun. Well, he's selling me. He's basically saying dance, monkey, dance, and then I'll throw in some money. But lucky for myself, I do have 2 sentences there that kind of sound Australian, so there you go. You should check out Hunt a Killer for some detective work and fun code crack. Oh, wait, is that monthly box you get where they, let me see here. Hunt a Killer. Yeah, you get a box in the mail and it's a mystery. Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I wanted to do that, but, yeah. Yeah, and it's episodic, so each month you get more. I really want to do that, but right now I'm not, throwing too much money around. Could you do Scottish? I can't do any accent. The only way I can do it is if somebody sends me a sentence and I sound it out and then it ends up sounding, like another language. That's all I got. Aussie Google Translator time. All right. Let's see. Yeah, you've got 6 cases and you've put up 1 box on the Discord, a group Discord. Really? Well, shucks, I gotta find some free time because that does sound like a lot of fun. If someone gave me $100 and told me dance monkey dance, I'm fucking busting out every single move. Yeah, exactly. I don't have too much pride for simple requests like that. But yeah, you don't have to match the donation or anything. Is something wrong with the stream? I don't see any of the comments that Ezra is reading. Well, there might be a bit of a delay. Or who knows, maybe I'm just hallucinating it and just reading them out. Let's see. There's a section she created in the server. Take a look. Okay, so it's on the Staycom cursory server. Yeah, I'll have to take a peek. But yeah, if you guys are, some of you in the chat are interested in true crime and mysteries and solving that kind of stuff, we do have some aficionados that you might find some shared interests with on the server. Next group activity. We'll have to. Okay, well, I've talked for about 10 minutes. The stream's over. It's probably going to get a bit boring here. But hey, I do want to thank you guys for stopping by. Hopefully you guys are enjoying it. I'll give more thought into the narration. In the meanwhile, though, it is a good fallback on for if the game is very short or if there's unforeseen technical difficulties. I'll have to swap that thumbnail out. But yeah, thanks for having a watch, and I hope everybody has a good rest of their day. Bye. Oh, if you're having issues with the comments, like they're not all showing up, click live chat at the top left, just like No Pencil says. I always try to have it on live chat because for some reason Google likes to filter some of the comments out of top chat, which I don't like because half the time YouTube automatic filters don't know what they're doing. So, yeah. The group server, not yours. Oh, well, gee. Okay, fine. I'll have a look. All right.